School District. It's great to see a big crowd today. Today we welcome Dr. Stephen Cusin for a very timely session, scheduling for an uncertain reentry and planning for a possible second interruption. This is definitely a topic that's consuming all of us. Just a little background on Steve before we get started. So Steve Cusin was a high school principal for 21 years. His expertise is in the area of scheduling and school organization. He wrote the manual, How to Build the Master Schedule in 10 Easy Steps, and has run a full-day workshop for educators with the same name for the past 34 years. Recently, he added a second day to the workshop focusing on manipulations and innovations to the traditional master schedule. Since the book's publication, he has been doing consulting for school districts around the country, running his workshop for small groups, assisting in the actual building of school schedules, or making recommendations for improving the master schedule itself. Originally, he worked with high schools. However, in recent years, he has expanded his work to middle school and even elementary schools. He's an adjunct professor at Hofstra in the Department of Radio, Television, Film, as well as being a workshop presenter for the university in the School of Education. In addition, he writes a newspaper column, The Principal's Office, for the Herald chain of newspapers, dealing with issues of concern to administrators, teachers, parents, and students. So I do want to give a big thank you to Kate Davern and Bernadette Gentile for inviting Steve in and for mobilizing resources and making this happen for all of us with the think tank. This is our 5th session, and it's been so incredibly helpful. So Steve, thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn it over for you, and we look forward to the Zoom session today with you.
Thanks a lot, Don. Thanks for that nice introduction. As I waited here, I scanned the crowd and I recognized some faces. So I see the nodding. Some of you have taken my scheduling workshop, so this is like old home week. And thank you for having me today. And I know some of you know I also am a reporter for WCBS News Radio 880. Be on today at 1:41, my standard time, 3 times a day. So I hope keep listening. We need the ratings. We need the ratings these days. So I'm going to switch right over now to the PowerPoint. And again, I'm going to get the thumbs up that you can all see everything over here. Do we see that? Are we good, Bernadette? Good.
We're good. We're good.
Okay, so I need some clues from you. Technology is not my strong point, and I rely on help for this. So again, our topic today is preparing for the reopening of schools come September. We hope. And you just call me Steve, even though the official title is there. I only answer to Steve. I'm not into titles. I'm an informal kind of a guy. So with that introduction, we shall move ahead. Okay. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right. So you're seeing my first graphic there. That is an attempt to show 2 bears hibernating. And I would facetiously say, would it be nice if all of us could just hibernate until February, when all of this is over and we wouldn't have to solve these problems and come up with alternate schedules? Sadly, that's not the case. And the second one shows an ostrich sticking his head in the ground, which again, a lot of people have said to me, oh, I wish I could do that. It would be a lot easier than having to deal with all of that. But that's not the case. We have to proceed. We can't do that. We must take the leadership role in designing a reopening plan and note the bold type, which is best for all children, elementary, middle, and high school. And in preparing this presentation and doing my reports for WCBS, I've had to put everything on hold because I've been doing the coronavirus crisis, all the news that fits to print, so to speak, day in and day out, how schools respond to it. Everybody's got an opinion and everybody's got a concern and everybody's worried. So our goal today is try to allay some of those fears as we get started. Okay, now I am not a lecture guy. Some of you know from if you've taken my classes at Hofstra, either in undergraduate, I have a few of those too, believe it or not, or the scheduling workshop. I'm a big believer in what I call the swap shop, where we trade ideas. And I built that into the program, the 90 minutes that we have today, that we will get to trade. We will get to trade, cross-pollinate, as I like to say. To make this work, I'm going to present 5 basic models momentarily, 5 basic models. And there are many more, but I boiled it down for today to 5. Then you will go into breakout rooms to discuss the pros and potential pitfalls of each in the time we have. I've jokingly said to Kate and Bernadette, boy, I wish we could have a whole day workshop, but we'll make do with the 90 minutes that we do have. Then we'll regroup, and a reporter from each breakout room will share its findings and recommendations. And I'll keep a running list on the board so we have some summary, some conclusions of what we dealt with today. So that's the game plan for the morning. A couple of caveats. Here's one for starters before we begin. There's a long list of, I just want to clear my pictures out so I can see this, long list of logistical, human, contractual, and budget concerns for each, and I have to stress that. We have many districts represented here, and in my reports for 880 for WCBS, I've been talking about some of the things we have to approach, and they're different for each district. Nothing will be perfect. Remember that. We're in uncharted waters here. We must keep in mind that our goal is to provide the best possible education during these challenging times, and we're going to have to bend a little bit to make that happen. I also want to stress, and I really was going to make this slide, but I didn't. I'm not a snake oil salesman. I'm not trying to sell you guys anything here in terms of the models. I'm not a salesman. I'm here to share what I think might work, and hopefully you can bring those concepts back to your individual districts. Keep in mind, I'm not dealing with any one district. There are many of you represented here. Also keep in mind, that's Taylor's equipment to the left. Each district and each school have to tailor any of these models to meet its own specifications in terms of bell schedules, teacher contracts, transportation, etc. What I mean by that is you may have rigid things in place before we even get started here. Your time constraints of how long the school day can be. Teacher time in terms of what your limits are. I know teacher contracts, having been around the block a few times, and each of you may have to negotiate some differences to make all of this work. To repeat, we're in uncharted waters and we have to be careful. Ditto for transportation. Some of you rely heavily on buses, others don't. So that's a third factor that you'll have to take into place, and of course the et cetera, all of the other factors. So again, I will present 5 generic models. You will have to tailor these to make them work for your own specific situation if you buy into any of them or pieces of any of them. Okay, remember, there's a clock, just the basics. I wish I had all day and I could go into an entire day on each of these models, but we have only 90 minutes to work with, and I want to have time for those breakout sessions and the reports back so we can cross-pollinate, so to speak. I am going to ask you to hold the questions until after the breakout sessions, because I've done this kind of thing before. And when one question starts, you know what happens. You're all educators. The questions flow, and I never get to anything else. So I want to get the 5 models presented to you, and we have Bernadette's going to generate those handouts, so you'll have hard copies in front of you with which to work. So that's the plan for the morning. Okay, everybody? So let's start with model number 1, all right? And in this model, I call it the split schedule for secondary schools. I'm talking about middle and high schools at this point. And I'll go slowly so you can absorb this because there's a lot to take in. Students will attend for approximately, and I say approximately because you all have different constraints, 3.5 hours each day, in the morning or the afternoon. Class size is cut in half, enabling the social distancing that we want so much so that your classes are half the size. And I'm going to show you a model schedule in a couple of seconds so you'll see what this looks like in the flesh. Teachers' workday is maintained, so that's good news. We don't have any contractual issues in terms of the number of hours teachers are in the building. 4 subjects are taken on A day and 4 subjects are taken on B day. Each period is 45 to 50 minutes in length, depending on the district's contract. It may be 38 minutes, it may be 52 minutes. I will use 50 minutes purely as an example. So keep that in mind because I don't want the hands to go flying up, and our district only allows such and such. The number of minutes is a for instance. Don't get bogged down about the examples that I give. You will tailor the number of minutes if you choose this plan to what works for your district. Elective offerings, this is the one downside, so to speak. I know many of you, because I've seen your course catalogs, you've sent them to me, have rich course offerings with many, many wonderful electives. That's going to be kind of hard to do with the schedule we have. They're going to be somewhat limited. That's the one downside of this. And this plan, some of you may realize that, especially if you've taken my course, borrows a page from block scheduling. So that's the plan. 3.5 hours, class size cut in half, teacher's workday maintained, 4 subjects A day, 4 subjects B day, number of minutes to be determined. I'm going to use 45 to 50 minutes in my examples. Elective offerings will have to be limited, as you'll see in the next few slides. The plan borrows a page from block scheduling. Okay, next. Here's a typical Bell schedule. Using 50 minutes, again, I stress that's just for an example, because again, I would anticipate the hands going up. We don't have 50 minutes, but we'll use 50 minutes. This is what the Bell schedule would look like in the morning. 8 to 8:50, 5-minute passing, 8:55 to 9:45, 9:50 to 10:40, 10:45 to 11:30. Someone said to me, why don't we let the kids stay in place and have the teachers move to them? Possible. I think teenagers need a little movement, but that's something that you guys would have to decide. Now at 11:35, the morning session leaves. The length of the break between the 2 sessions depends on transportation and not having contact as kids come and go. So that's something you would have to decide. I pick it right up at 5th period, 11:40, 5 minutes later, but you might have to condense the periods and have more time between the morning and afternoon sessions. That's not a big deal. It's not a deal breaker. You can adjust that to make that work for you. Period 6, period 7, period 8, 3:15 dismissal. And again, you will determine your own schedule. Anticipating questions, somebody raises a hand and says, but we have to end by 2:55, just adjust the period lengths, because I've had that question before. This is a for example, a for instance only. Again, take a look. You're going to get a copy of this in a few minutes. 4 periods, 50 minutes of length in the morning, a break to be determined between the 2, 4 periods in the afternoon, 50 minutes in length, and then you would determine how many minutes to make this work. This is an example only, okay? Because I know that question was going to come up. Okay, that's model number 1. And here's a sample schedule of what it would look like. So Johnny Jones, or Jane Jones, to be politically correct, male or female, we have an A day and a B day. And on A day, Johnny might take, this is just an example, English, social studies, health and phys ed, and elective. B day could start with an elective, science, and again, we could work the lab in. There were longer periods, so we might not need a lab, but we could get the lab in, dovetailed with health and phys ed, Spanish, and math. It's kind of borrowing from the block schedule concept, taking away some of the, what I feel are some of the disadvantages of the block schedule. These are some of the basic good things about a block. 4 periods one day, 4 periods another, and the student gets in an 8-period day. It's kind of neat. It works without getting too complicated. Having spoken to some scheduling people who have not started building their master schedule yet, they want to keep things simple at this point, and this is a simple model. That's number one, okay? The split day. Let's move on. Oh, wait, teacher schedule. I'm going to leave this up for a while because this needs to be digested carefully. This is for a typical English teacher with 5 sections of freshman English. Doesn't have to be 5. It could be 2 English 3s, 2 English 1s, and English 5. I'm making it simple for the example. The teacher has 3 classes on A day and 2 classes on B day. So the teacher still has 5 classes. So one example, English 1, section 1 has been divided in half. So let's look at A day, and I color-coded this to make it easier for you to understand. A day, English 1, section 1, first period. English 1, section 1 is also 5th period. The other half comes in the afternoon. English 1, section 2, period 2. Again, it comes, the second half of the class comes back for period 6. English 1, section 2, teacher has a break, period 3, and period 4, section 3, and so on. B day, sections 4 and 5, the same pattern. Again, it's neat, and I color-coded it to try to make it as understandable as I could for you, because I know this is new to a lot of people who are attending. So basically what the teacher is doing still has the 5 classes, but they've been cut in half so that you've got the social distancing that you want. Half the kids come in the morning, half the kids come in the afternoon on both days. That's the model 1, and that's your split day. Model 2, a little easier to understand now that we've been through the first one. This is the alternate day schedule. So the students will attend all day, but on alternate days. The bell schedule is the same as the conventional one. It's the same bell schedule. The major difference is that classes are half the size. There will be fewer contact minutes. We realize that. However, I'm using myself as an example when I teach, you've got a smaller class size. Instead of 26, you've got 13. So you have more opportunity with half the size for individualized instruction. So what you lose in contact minutes, you make up in face-to-face contact with the kids. So there's an advantage to this, and it's neat. It's a little neat. This is scheduling 102. If you want to go this route, Zoom lessons could conceivably be provided for the days off, discussions, drills, and enrichment. Now, I'm going to be blunt. I've spoken to a lot of educators. This has run the gamut during the pandemic this spring. Some have followed the Zoom lessons religiously. Others have not. And I've heard this from parents, students, and teachers. So this would be an individual decision by your district if it wants to go that route. The gold standard would be to have somebody who actually plans Zoom activities on the days off so that there would be things for students to do, to hire somebody or assign somebody to plan Zoom activities when the students aren't meeting with their teachers. So that's model number 2, okay? Model number 3 is the most radical of the 3. And it's kind of fun. I kind of like this one, but it involves a lot of planning. The large school is broken down into several smaller units, small learning communities, depending on the original size of the school. But this works whether you're a school of 3,000 or 1,000, it could still be done. So that should not be a deal breaker. A group of teachers representing the 5 core areas, and I'm including world language as one of the core areas, is assigned to each. Elective teachers are working full-time. They're rotating to further reduce class size as we start to build the master schedule. The teachers work together. They design a master schedule for their, and I'm going to use that word because I love it, for their school community. Now, this question's come up when I've done this before. The makeup of each community would have to reflect special populations. There might be an advanced placement, an ENL, a special education cohort. That could be worked out. It could not be random. You'd have to be careful in designing your communities. But again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. Small learning communities can be very nice if you take these factors into consideration. And it could be something really, really good if you want to make it work, okay? However, the SLCs, and I mentioned some of the disadvantages that you have because you're limiting course offerings in each community. The fringe benefit is that far more personal. Fewer students fall through the cracks. Those teachers are really going to own the students and keep track of them. I really, really like this one. And Don mentioned before that I was a principal for 21 years. The one thing that, and I was always a principal of a big school, the one thing that I felt was lacking was personalization. And the SLC offers the chance to get to know your kids and own your kids and not let them slip through the cracks. This is one to consider, the small learning community. And it might be merged with models 1 or 2 that I mentioned before. Okay, number 4. Let's go over to the middle school. And some of this is applicable to the high school as well, but I want to give middle school its due. This model is similar to the SLC in that it breaks a large school down into smaller units. In the introduction, it was mentioned that in recent years, I've started to work with schools on middle schools as well. For years, I didn't. I think I've had more middle school consulting jobs than high school jobs in the last couple of years. And I really enjoy it. I don't want to see, and I think you'll all agree with me, a junior high school, literally a junior high school. Middle years are different years, and I'm into the middle school teams. Core teachers are assigned to a cohort of students. For example, 5 students working with 100 students, and again, anticipating the question, but we have 120 on the team, we have 80 on the team. Fine, no problem. Any number can be on the team, divide your grade up, make it work. There's no hard and fast rule about how many students there have to be on the team. Those teachers, similar to the small learning community, can build their own period-by-period schedule, keeping class sizes small. How do they do that? The elective teachers are pushed in. They work full schedules. They work the same as the core teachers. Students take what we call a wheel of electives, sampling the traditional middle school classes. I think I was working in, I think it was Williamsburg, Virginia, where I saw a wheel so effective for the middle school kids, where they got a taste of every possible subject that you can take in the middle school. It was really nice. It lowers the class size. It gives the teachers their time off. And as you'll see in the next slide, it provides for CPT, common planning time for the teachers, the 5 core teachers to meet. So I'm really a big fan of this team approach. And a sample schedule appears on the next slide. We need to digest this one a little bit here too. So I'll leave it up. First, we'll look at the student schedule. Look at the top. Team teachers can form small groups of students within their team. So they will create this. I'm using an 8-period day. Now, if you have a 9-period day, that's even better. You have more ways to divide the students. But I'm going with the basic 8-period day. So again, anticipating questions, this certainly works for 9 periods. If you have it, it makes the class sizes even a little bit smaller because you got more to work with. So let's look at a sample student schedule. Again, this is just a for instance. It doesn't have to follow this pattern. Period 1 is the elective wheel. And I like to have an elective first period for a reason. Teachers like common planning time, and I call it breakfast time. When your 5 core teachers can have that as their CPT, it's really nice. Yeah, they have their bagel and coffee, but they also talk about kids. Have you noticed that Mary's been sleeping in class and the teacher says, I've noticed that too. They discuss kids, they discuss what they're doing, they plan stuff together. So I kind of like prep period on period 1 where possible. Now, if you'll note, English and social studies on this kid's schedule are bold print, and that's not an accident. Again, those of you who've taken my courses know I'm a big proponent of interdisciplinary subjects study. I firmly believe those 2 subjects should be intertwined. The example I give in my scheduling workshop is why teach the French Revolution and the Tale of Two Cities in different subjects, let alone different grades. They should be intertwined, and it can be done constantly. Social studies is the tail that wags the dog. There's a fixed curriculum. You can pick the English readings to match social studies, but that's for another day. If you have any questions about that, I'd love to answer them. I firmly believe that's the way to go, and it can be done in all subjects. When I was a principal, I inherited, I can't take any credit for it, a 10th grade interdisciplinary course. I did expand it down to the 9th grade World Studies, up to the 11th grade American Studies, and even 12th grade Economics and Government, because the readings could reflect what was taught in social studies. Okay, 4th period is math, lunch, science, world language, and then something, again, a little personal note from yours truly, something I like very much for middle school kids, a seminar, group guidance, study skills, research, but a chance for these kids to deal with issues. It's kind of a quasi-health class, but it's so important for middle school kids to have something. But that's just a little detour that that Mr. Steve over here likes to talk about, okay? So just a little extra detour there. Now, let's go to the teacher schedule, what it might look like. So again, in this example, common planning time. All of the core teachers would probably be teaching periods 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 to enable them to mix the kids. There's a lunch, and then in this case, a duty professional period. I know you're all different, and ideally might have a 9th period. Your school district might have a 9th period. I keep repeating, I'm talking to so many districts here, so I can't have a common denominator. You have so many different givens and restrictions. So I'm trying to make this as generic as possible. So that's what a sample teacher schedule would look like. Model 5, elementary school. And this model is similar to what already exists in many elementary schools. It's the teaming. My local school, they've moved to teaming. It also borrows from the high school and middle school models, so it's a composite. All the teachers, core and specials in the school, are assigned to a grade or a team. Okay, they're all assigned to a team. So it's following the pattern we've talked about. They in turn divide the students into small groups, thereby reducing class size. So we have the 5 cores and the specials. So you've now reduced your class size considerably. Together, a departmental master schedule is developed, much like we did for this small learning community and for the team. One alternative, which I know has been mentioned to me, is a staggered schedule, which further reduces class size, not everybody arriving at the same time and leaving at the same time, and more lunch periods. So you're spreading the wealth as much as possible. So that is another option to keep class size and social distancing down. And, you know, I know we'll get to it in a second, but keeping it separate in the younger years is going to be a tall order. The objective is to have a limited number of students in classroom spaces at any one time. Special attention will have to be paid to primary grades. This is from one of my neighbors. How do you keep kindergarten kids separate? There's a yeoman task. You also have issues for special ed, E&L, and phys ed, which by definition, there's contact. So this is going to involve some creativity because of the nature of the beast, so to speak, the fact that the students have the need for contact in those subject areas. It can be done. Keep in mind what I said in the opening slide. Our goal is to create the best learning environment in uncharted waters for as many kids as possible. Nothing is perfect. I'm not selling anything. I'm not a snake oil salesman. My goal is to give you a framework to start to think about what could possibly be done. So as I say, the models may not be perfect. There may be bugs in each and every one of them, but you can work them out. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as I said before. If you like one of the 5 models or want to combine 2 or adapt something you're already doing with something I said, go for it. Go for it. That's the time. We're in an area we've never been before. View these as a starting point. This is a starting point. There are questions to be answered for each one. There are issues to be resolved, be it contract, transportation, bell schedule. Many things will have to be resolved. Safety issues, temperature taking, notification of parents. You'll have to work these out. But to repeat, we've got to come up with the best possible venue for students to get an education. Districts can adapt all of these to fit their own needs and requirements. So now it's going to be your turn. We're going to go into breakout rooms for about 20, 25 minutes. Let me explain that visual. That's a bee pollinating. The goal here is what I call cross-pollination. The groups have been randomly formed. At first, Bernadette and Kate and I were talking about having elementary, everybody in one district, but in the limited time we have, that would be tough to pull off in breakout rooms. Similarly, cross-pollination is good because you get to share ideas from district to district, and you can go back to your district and say, hey, this is what they're doing over there, whatever. It's a chance to share ideas, as I said at the beginning. What I'd like you to do is select a reporter and or recorder who will share the findings, questions, and concerns with a larger group when we reconvene in about, according to my watch, it's 9:31, which is just where I wanted to be. I have a half hour to talk to you. When we reconvene, we can talk about some of the things you discussed in group. There are a lot of groups, so maybe I'll ask Kate and Bernadette, maybe we'll keep this to about 20 minutes in breakout rooms. We'll play it by ear. So with that, let me come out of this share. For a second. Yeah. Okay, I am back. I hope I didn't put anybody to sleep there. The 5 models. Bernadette, I'm going to hand it over to you in terms of the handouts and the breakout rooms, okay? Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Steve is going to stay on with us, everyone. He has provided us with a handout, kind of a summary of those 5 models. I'm going to email that to you in about 1 minute. I will put everyone into random breakout rooms now. We have about 109 people. And Steve, you want them to discuss the pros of each model and the possible pitfalls.
The possible pitfalls, yeah. And what they think would work best, and bring back any questions when we reconvene as a group that we can share. And then I'll hopefully get that sharing board up in the interim, and we'll be all systems go.
Okay, great. So I will set up here about, let's see, just 1 second. Just give me 1 second, everybody. Okay, I'm going to set up about 15 breakouts, create rooms. Okay, so you'll be getting, you'll be asked to join a breakout room momentarily, and I will be sending out the handout in about 30 seconds after that. Just give me 1 second. Actually, I'll send you there. Okay. There we go. And let me just send that email out to everyone. Okay, Steve, let's see, everybody should be joining a breakout room now. Amy, do you see the breakout room that you were asked to go into? You got it? Okay, good. Krista, I'll assign you to a room now.
Okay, my computer overheated and I had.
No worries. Oh, it's just me, sorry.
And one of the guidance counselors. I'm sorry, can you say that again?
I can't hear you,
Sure.
Christine.
Oh, you can't? Can
Oh,
you
there
hear
we
me
go.
now?
That's better. Yep.
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 Christine Morris, I'm from Riverhead, and I'm one of the guidance counselors. Did you hear that?
I'm
Yeah.
Jim McKenna, and I am a retired superintendent of schools from Mattatuck. I was a high school principal in Mattatuck High School for 16 years, and I'm now a member of the Eastern Suffolk BOCES board and the Southampton School Board.
Nice.
Excellent.
Hi, Jim. I'm Monica Polos-Teto, and I'm the director of the ENL Dual Language and World Language Programs at South Country Central School District.
Hi, I'm Denise Stevenson. I'm in the same district as Christine Morris. I'm at Riverhead Central School District. I'm the director of ENL and World Languages for grades 5 through 12.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Pat Savona, and I'm from Longwood. I teach 4th grade. ENL is, my partner is the ENL teacher. I'm the gen ed teacher.
Nice.
Excellent. Okay, so
Hi, Bernadette.
Hey everyone, I'm Bernadette. I'm from Eastern Suffolk BOCES. I'm popping in and out of rooms here. I just wanted to make sure you all received that email I just sent out. So
Yes.
I did
just
not.
make-
I did not.
You didn't? Oh, I apologize, Jim. I will send it to you. You are not on the main list. I'll send it to you right now. And I'll put that there.
Thank you for being such a great manager of these events. I always know that you're really incredibly efficient, and thank you. It just makes everything.
Thank you so much. It means so much to me. We really aim to please and help our districts in the best way possible. So thank you so much.
You can tell. Thank you.
You're complimenting me in front of Jim McKenna. Oh my goodness. I'm so. Right?
The paycheck a raising them in the mail. So.
Thank you so much. Jim, I'll send that out to you right now. I'm going to
Don't
exit.
wait for me if it's to start, guys.
Yeah, if one of you could though share you should be able to share your screen so that everybody could see that handout. That would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
And then Mary Ellen, you're just going to add the notes to the handout?
Sure, I could do that. I
think
shared
we
the
have to
screen.
then
Does
share-
everyone see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Mary Ellen Weaver.
Oh.
I'm a professional developer, shared data expert for BOCES. Also a certified administrator and math teacher. So I worked as a teacher and as an admin previously. So, so this is great. We have all different kinds of folks. We have guidance, we have ENL, we have elementary, and we have a seasoned superintendent building leadership person. So so do you want to just go through each model and share what we feel? Would that be a great way to go through the conversation? Pros and cons?
That's fine.
Okay. So model number 1, the split schedule, being the half-day morning, half-day afternoon, dividing up the kids. So you'd have your regular master schedule when you're building. Has anyone other than Jim built a master schedule?
yeah, I think that's the challenge. You know,
And
go ahead.
no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, because one of the things I like the small learning community, that idea. The one thing I was a little confused about when he talked about all teachers, like the core and the specials, are assigned to a grade or a team. Did that mean here, like in the building, like in brick and mortar, like literally like my PE teacher and my art teacher, they would have a group of kids, basically? Like I wasn't quite sure how that would look, you know, in those elementary school teams.
Yeah, I was a little confused by that too. I'm a kindergarten teacher, so of course my mind too is like, how are we doing this?
Yeah.
And keeping them separate. But you know, my question about the elementary model is that it looked like that's reducing class size, but again, then where are the rest of the kids? So is half your class is with the gym teacher and half your class is with you, or is half your class at home? You know, I was a little confused about that.
I think the excuse me, I'm John. I'm principal in Islip High School, but my last 22 years I was in Nassau County, so I was checking in with a bunch of colleagues in Nassau County, and I think one of the things you just brought up was with the K-2. I think they're looking at taking something very similar to a middle school model and pushing that down into the elementary level, where you would be able to, you know, kids could rotate to specials and then stay in their room for the remainder. So your art, your phys ed, your music teacher, you know, possibly a health component would be able to, you know, take a group of kids and rotate them through. So they're looking at the elementary level of expanded cost in terms of specialty, like specialty staffing. The middle school, you know, would be a population split, and then the high schools are like the wild, wild west with, you know, what needs to happen.
I like that idea that he shared in model number 1, where the high school kids would come on one day and be able to get their classes, and some would come in the morning and some would come in the afternoon. I would be a little concerned about what happens to the elective teachers, because it seems like they would have so few chances to take electives. So what would happen to those teachers during that time?
Yeah, and then my other question about the first model too is as far as like if there's only 5 minutes between, or you know, a short amount of time between the AM and PM, I guess if there's no like cleaning getting done between the first group and second group, and if that's the case, then why not just put them together, you know? Because I would think that maybe like alternating days would allow for a deeper cleaning in between groups of kids, but
yeah, I was thinking that maybe the idea was also they wouldn't eat lunch at school, so that you eliminate that whole idea of having them in the cafeteria at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, everyone. It's Bernadette here. I just want to make sure you all know that one person should record the pros and the pitfalls, and then one person could report it out at the end when Steve brings it back. I just sent a message to all the breakout rooms. Steve asked me to remind everybody to do that. Okay. So now I also made it available that you can share your screen. Okay, perfect. I don't know who did that, but thank you. I'll pop into another group now. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
A lot to help the students as well as the families, just how to log into Google Classroom, how to view an assignment, how to submit it. I mean, nothing can compare with a video. And so that really helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
What a challenge those first few weeks were. You know, we were just trying to actually make sure we had in touch with all things.
Mm-hmm. I know. All right, so we have a couple pitfalls. So do we have any pros for any of the models?
So I think a pro for the first model is, keeping the instruction compact to either AM or PM. I think that would be for planning purposes, and also, the flip side of that is the childcare, right? So if you're instructing your own classroom and your children, so it kind of goes into each other. But I do think the structure of knowing what to anticipate and what is formulated and agreed upon, maybe not liked, but agreed upon ahead of time, is very helpful in planning. So that would be, I think, an advantage for consideration, if you like that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure you all have a recorder and somebody that's going to report out.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I think we're pretty good.
Yeah. And then you think about the households that have 9, 10 kids within district. That's a lot.
Hi, sorry to interrupt here. I just want to make sure you all have one recorder and one person that's going to share out at the end. If you haven't, you can do that now.
How can you tell, Bernadette?
A teacher sense in me. All right, thanks so much, though.
Thank you.
Okay, and you should be able to share your screen too. So if any one of you want to share that handout that I gave you, I gave everybody the ability to share your screen.
Thank you.
No problem.
I'm not in front of a computer, so I definitely will rule.
What would even, it said the teachers design the schedule for their community. How would you even determine what their community was? Or I might not have enough understanding about that.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to make sure you have one recorder and one person who is going to report out.
Bernadette, this is going to shock you, but it's me.
That does shock me, Sue. I know that does not shock me, everyone. Great job. I knew you would do it. Thank you.
You're welcome. What were you going to say about that?
So we team on our.
Yeah, I've heard that universally. That's a problem. Tracking down your missing students. The guidance counselors are going after some of them, but some kids just have had no instruction since mid-March. Who's up next?
They have to learn to read. We really need them physically present for us to do that. So, and then we don't have to deal with lunch and gym, which are on, and recess, which are going to be very difficult to manage. And we can send kids who have free and reduced lunch, we can send them home with food, or, that would be my goal.
Yeah, I'm like, Therese, you muted.
Sorry. Laura, I agree. I kind of like the idea. At first, when this all happened, I was thinking about trying to do the half day. I call it the old Longwood. Longwood had it years ago, but bring them in half, bring them home for lunch, and then bring them, because you get to see them every day. I feel like I'm grade 6, 7, and 8. And for me, I think that consistency would be, and then do some kind of blend, some kind of flipped model in the afternoon or morning when they're not there. And then hearing Steve just talk about it, it's funny because I was looking at that and I was hoping I'd get into a breakout room with you, because then he broke it up for the middle school teams. And I was like, that's kind of like my schedule now. I don't really see how I'm going to be able to float all that. And then you put them back on a rotating basis. And we have those double periods in my building, which I know, everything can go out the window. It's just about getting them in. But it's like, what do you do with some of those, 8th grade Regents classes that are double periods? So that's kind of why I like that first model of that. You see those kids every single day and then they're home for lunch.
I think one of the hardest things with that we've been discussing, because it's definitely the one I'm a proponent of, is getting the rooms clean in between. I also think a lot of rooms to get clean in an hour and a half. Right, teachers will get a lunch and a prep in there. Everybody will have a common planning time, which would be great. But we got to wipe down everything in the room in the meanwhile.
So excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's a really good point. And this is Bernadette. I just want to make sure that you have one person that's assigned as the person that is taking notes for your pros and your pitfalls. Yeah, it's my teacher spidey sense that told me that. So I just, John, you're the person. You're it. I'm sorry, you just said not it, so you're it.
Wait a second.
You didn't know she flipped the nose trick.
It's opposite day. So you just need somebody to kind of write down those pros and those pitfalls, and then somebody will report out at the end. Okay,
right.
so I just wanted to give you that heads up now. I kind of sent it as a note, but not everybody sees those breakout room notes, so that's why I'm popping in. You can do it. I have faith in you.
Okay.
So I have a question that is for you elementary people, you know, and you mentioned something about recess. And while I'm a secondary person, you know, the thing that
everybody isn't that many groups. I don't know about, you know, maybe in the bigger districts, but.
Yeah.
Excuse me, everyone. Hi, it's Bernadette. I just want to make sure that you all have at least one person that's kind of taking the notes of the pros and the pitfalls, and one person would report out. Yes?
We haven't come to that conclusion yet, but I can do it. I've been taking notes. Unless somebody else wants to do it.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you,
No
Matt.
problem. No problem.
Bernadette, when I went to try to click the link for the in the chat, it's not a link. It's only coming up as text.
It's not for the attendance?
Yeah.
It's not coming up as a link? All right, let me go check that.
I see it in there, but it's not a link. It's just a text.
For some reason, I don't know why that happens. On my end, it's showing as a link. Some people it shows as a link, some people it doesn't. So what you could do is if you can copy and paste it in the URL, that should work that way, but I'll try again.
All right, I'll do it after. I just didn't want to do it in the middle of.
No problem, no problem.
Okay, thanks.
I see you. You're here.
So I think one of the benefits is that the students still get all their content in addition to the electives and special.
So we're going to have to do an alternating day. We talked about doing half days as well, but similar to what we were just speaking about in the Model 1, cleaning of buses, cleaning of, you know, the buildings, things like that. So we're kind of up.
That we can make sure that their mental health is okay, that they are okay with coming back to school, the parents are okay with coming back to school, because
it's gonna, they're not gonna separate.
Yeah, that's the most
A
important.
lot of our staff were affected, so we have to see how they are, assess where they're at.
Excuse me, everyone. I don't mean to interrupt. This is Bernadette. I just want to make sure that you have somebody that's recording your pros and cons or pros and pitfalls. And if you can have somebody that can report out at the end. I had a feeling, my spidey sense, my teacher spidey sense. I sent something in the breakout room, like a little message, but not everybody gets to see that sometimes. Are you good? Can somebody do that? You're good? I see Carrie nodding. You're good, Carrie?
I'm good with the idea, but I did not record all the pros and cons.
Has anybody
I have a
kind of
couple
started?
down.
Okay, no problem. So we can, oh, good. Thank you, Carissa.
Oh, good job, Carissa.
Thank you.
Back to the
I'm not sure I have it all, but I think really what we're saying here is there's value to all the models, right? The pitfalls are ensuring that you know, whatever plan District A does is somehow congruent with District B, wherever that may be, because of really the childcare issue. And then, you know, Kerry brought up a great point. Like if you're in
we will have it in some form or another. So I think the instructional side is way more important than the logistical side, but the logistics is what's on everyone's mind right now.
Hi, everyone. It's Bert.
Can I ask what you guys are doing right now for the instructional side of it to push forward?
So in my district in Patchogue Medford, we're running a virtual summer school. And one of the things that we just had a meeting with all our teachers, we're going to start opening the door to them doing live classroom instruction through summer school, since it's an additional stipend. So that was one of the requirements in order to get hired for summer school. And we are going to start, I call it the spaghetti test. We're going to try a lot of different models, and whatever one sticks or we think we have the capacity to use, and then move forward, talk to their union and negotiate if we have to some of those things. And we'll have ironed it out over the summer so that we can technologically feel comfortable with, here's the easiest way to do it, give them PD, and then if we are told we're not going back, we'll be able to transition to something a little more virtual, a little more one-to-one, and be prepared. I mean, literally, we're all, you know, in the wind on this. There's no right or wrong.
We're doing exactly the same thing with our summer program. It's a requirement of the summer program for them to do a piece of it. We have some different pieces that are also including they're recording videos and having live sessions with the kids and doing kind of a flipped classroom. But I also have a committee of representatives from the entire district, K-12, that have been people that have been doing a variety of things.
I'm taping myself doing a lesson on the board. Then the next the synchronous part becomes for the B students just seeing that lesson. And then the next day you do a lesson for the B students and then the A students see that lesson. So in a weird way, if you want to take, I think we want to take a complete advantage of when students are in our realm, when they're actually on site. We want to take complete advantage of students being there. But if you think about the way that we have the time structure set up, there's probably, and some of you already said this, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of time for there to be a synchronous virtual world, because you're going to be with students in your class. The only way you could really do that in some weird way technologically is if you have half the kids in the class, you're videotaping the class and other kids are asking questions while you're actually in real class, you know, which is some I'm sure some colleges do.
Hello, Bernadette.
Hi guys, I'm sorry to pop in
I like that idea.
You know, I'm kind of the same hat as Anthony. I'm the union vice president in our district. That would be some really tough contractual infringements that I don't know how much we'd want to move on that. Lots of things happen in classes, and a lot of teachers have been fired for things that are totally not under their control. And having the class videotape, even though it would work, Chris, it makes the most sense, there would have to be a lot of contractual language that took us off the hook, I believe.
Yeah. The other issue with that, guys, is that you're not going to have a kid sitting through 6.5 hours of watching
Right.
lectures.
Yeah, right.
Online learning, best practices online learning is different than what you're going to see in the classroom.
Right.
You do have to have interactions, but it has to be short. There has to be opportunities for kids to jump in and out. And Bernadette.
Hi, so sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to let you know I'm sending out a message to all the breakout rooms. There's a 2-minute warning and one person is going to be reporting out.
Okay.
Well, we know who that is, Glenn.
You know me, Bernadette.
Glenn, you brought up a great point.
Someone always emerges as a leader in the group, right?
There you go, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah. Chris?
Oh, no, Glenn, I was just saying you were on a very important point.
Yeah, the online, I've been doing a lot of work on.
Hi everyone. I don't want to interrupt, but I just want to let you know we're going to end in about 1 minute. I'll send a message to all the groups, but somebody will be reporting out their pros and their pitfalls, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Did you guys get bumped out of a group? Thank you, everyone. Steve will start up again and we'll collect all of your information. One person from each group will be asked to report out the pros and the pitfalls that you discussed. At the end of this, I will resend out the link for attendance to the registrants. So don't worry if you were not able to access it.
I was Bernadette randomly placed me in one of the groups, and I hope the others were as effective as ours was. I was jotting down ideas that they gave me in the limited time we have shared. And the common denominator is uncharted waters. We have to think outside the box a little bit here. So I'm going to try to go, and hopefully this will work, list some of these things on a screen. And Bernadette, can you help me out here? We'll call in the different groups for the spokesperson. Can you do that for us, okay?
Sure, I could do that, but you're going to open up the Word document, or?
That's what I want to try to do. Now, that Word document is, see, that's what I don't see over here. We have that blank Word document. Let's try this one if we can get this over here. I think I can do it here.
Yep, and a new one, yes.
Good. Do you see a blank? Is the blank up?
Yes. No, I don't see the blank. No, I see the Model 1.
Oh, how do I get, okay, I have a blank up now. Maybe I should go out and come in again.
Yes.
If not, I'll keep a running tab and send these out to everybody. Let's try again over here. This should work now. Have you got blank now?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so sharing in my group, I know Rich was the chairperson in our group. We had a number of good ideas that came up, a number of concerns. And my final question was, if you had your druthers, what would you do if we had to start tomorrow? That's where we kind of left it off. Bernadette, take it away and I'll do some recording here, okay?
Okay, so let's go with breakout group 1. That room, breakout room 1 had Jim McKenna in it, so I'm not sure who is the recorder or the person reporting out in that room. Is it Mary Ellen?
Yep, it's me.
Bernadette, how many breakout rooms? I just wanted to divvy the
We
time.
had 15 breakout rooms. So everybody will have maybe, if we could do it really condensed, because I know we only have about 20 minutes left before you can do some questions. So maybe a minute or two each for pros and cons really quickly.
Okay. For model number 1, the pros we thought were that there was increased social contact with peers and teachers, which we felt was important to our students to get back to some semblance of normalcy. We also liked the idea that they were coming to the school building every single day, and we thought that that would be helpful for parents as well as for the students. The cons for model number 1, we weren't sure what was going to happen with all of the elective teachers. Could we make sure that each teacher had a schedule maintained and, reduce the concept of possible layoffs? We were very concerned about busing, having enough buses to get a group home and a group back. You'd have to use different sets of buses for that. And also, we didn't think that there was appropriate time to do any sanitizing in between. For model number 2, cons or similar cons, the pros, was that it kept our feet in both pools, so to speak. There was distance education so that teachers could keep using that model and get stronger, and the students would have the opportunity for the same. But it also got the kids in the building, which kept the engagement level higher than having them home all the time. Another con was that having kids home alone means they're kind of in charge of their own level of engagement. I know in my own household, even though I am home, my son's level of engagement was really low. Model number 3, the concept is brilliant, but we all kind of felt it would lead to chaos, that there wasn't enough time to plan something like that. It would really require extensive planning, and that we didn't feel that there was the time or the mindset currently to accomplish something like that. Number 4, we thought that was very similar to what's already being done in middle schools, so we saw that as a good possible option. And the elementary model, we had some confusion in the elementary model, trying to figure out how it would actually lessen the number of students. So we didn't do too much discussion on how that would work. That's
Thank you.
Thank you. And someone also raised a 1 day on, 3 days off to try to lessen the amount of students. So it'd be a full schedule, 1 day, and then 3 days off, and then coming back. So like a 1, 2, 3, 4 schedule.
Okay, thanks so much. And maybe as we move into the other groups, if you had similar ideas, you could just concur and then move on to any other ideas that weren't mentioned.
I just want the time. I'm concerned about the time, Bernadette. Yeah.
Right. So for if you already, if somebody already mentioned something prior to, that you discussed prior, you don't need to mention it again. That would be great. Thanks so much. So breakout room 2, I had Mary Losing in it. If Mary Losing or somebody in that group wants to respond.
I believe that was my group 2, I believe. So one of the things, very similar things, but for the group 1, for the model 1, one of the cons was cleaning. How would we be able to clean in between? That came up. And because it was the AM, PM, we don't know if sports would be involved, but how would those kids get to any sporting events or getting to work for the kids, especially in high school, because of the timing? We thought that was going to be difficult. And what would the kids be doing? If they're in an AM session, they'll be, available. They would be almost free for certain hours of the day, and what would they be doing? So we thought that could be an issue. For model 2, it was interesting. We didn't really have a lot of pros for model 2. And we thought one of the things that is parents may not send their kids to school, which could be an issue. And honestly, how would the teachers manage the idea of doing distance learning and live learning at the same time? So one of the things we talked about was the idea that it might end up that romance piece or the reality piece is that teachers will be doing the same lesson twice on Monday and Tuesday because they cannot manage to do Google Classroom. So we thought that could be bad. And 3, we thought one of the things a little chaotic, but we thought it could be a little chaotic for model 3 because the teachers, if they're designing their own schedules, it would be difficult for administrators to make sure that things were sort of even across the board and kids were getting what they needed. And to be honest, we spent a lot of time talking about that. We didn't get to 4 and 5. So we apologize, but those were
Jean Marie, no apology needed at all. Thank you.
Yeah.
The list is growing there. It's interesting. The first 2 breakout rooms, number 3, had similar comments there. It's got potential, but could it be done? Okay, Bernadette.
Yeah. So were you in room 3, Steve? No.
I'm with Rich Hoppin. I think it was 6. I think. Yeah.
Okay. So breakout room 3 was Andrew Bennett, Camille, Lori Kerner. I'm not sure who the person is that is reporting out for group 3. Robert Brandy, Kelly Cordera.
That's me, Bernadette.
Okay. Hi, Lori.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. The other groups really paved the way. We agreed with a lot of, what some of the other groups were bringing to the forefront as far as concerns. One big concern for us, of course, was the social emotional component when children come back. A lot of these schedules are centered around the academics, which we know are important, but you know, we want to make sure that there's time for children also to socialize and to be able to have that time to kind of re-enter and reset their default. Some of the other things we were concerned about was the scope of classes that would be offered in such a structured, shortened model. We were concerned about children not being able to really tap into their interests and their passions. Of course, offerings may be scaled a little bit. And then the other thing, well, there were several other things, but the other thing I'll mention for the sake of time is, you know, once we take temperatures upon arrival, what are we doing next? You know, we felt that we really can't create a quarantine room because if a child has a temperature and it's not related to a virus or the virus, we don't want all of those children together. So there are so many things that we really need to consider in properly, you know, planning realistically for a return.
Wonderful. Thank you.
The list is growing. Keep going.
Okay, so room number 4 is Sue Craddock.
Hi Bernadette. Hi everyone. So we had really more of a left brain group. We were talking about more structures, schedules, and desks. We didn't even start the SEL conversation. But with model number 1, something that hasn't been mentioned is childcare concerns, what we're going to do with the kids with those part-time attendants, and I guess that would go to any model, really. We also talked about in number 2, the hybrid, which we thought might be the strongest model because of ease of implementation. However, the half class size might not be enough for some districts. We might be looking at the need to have a quarter of a class size if you're at the high school and you have 28, 30, 32 kids in a class. Model number 3 with the teaming, I just think you need time to work on that, which somebody also already said. 4 and 5, we feel like we needed more information to understand how that would work. The difference between rotating electives and not rotating electives. We wondered about number 5, would we run out of classrooms to do that? And we really weren't comfortable with the whole departmental piece, meaning we really didn't understand how we schedule elementary departmental. So I think we just need more information on that.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, now break at room 5. We have Donna Giuffre in that room. I'm assuming it's you, Donna? That took the notes or that's reporting out?
No, it was me.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
Okay. So we had several of the same things, but some of the pitfalls that we talked about, that some activities that go on in schools like chorus or singing in music class can be seen now are being seen as more high-risk activities. So we have to kind of really look at the activities that are going on in schools. We also have to consider how teachers feel about coming back. You know, they might not feel comfortable right now coming back or comfortable in September coming back. So that is something that needs to be considered. And then kind of going along with the childcare needs are, someone had said in our group that like the DOE is kind of gonna have the same model. So if you work in one school and your child goes to another, you're on the same schedule. With so many districts on Long Island, it's likely that there will be several different models. So one of the things was thinking about districts working together to kind of collaborate and use similar models. A disadvantage of Model 3, we said, was that some students might be segregated, you know, in terms of if we're separating out by ENL, special education, those sorts of things. And we would have to really consider ways to integrate students in that way. Some of the pros that we talked about were with Model 1, that the structure of Model 1 could be helpful with planning because it's pretty structured. Some of the more integrated models where the specials teachers are integrated or there's more of a ENL social studies collaboration really will allow for teaming and kind of bringing us places where we want to go. So this might be a good jumping off point for something that could be continued when hopefully things get back to normal, that high level of collaboration and integration in terms of curriculum. And the limited, class sizes allowing teachers to develop relationships, knowledge of student interests and learning styles. And we talked about also how split schedules have worked in the past. And it might be beneficial to some families who maybe work different shifts, that it might be able to accommodate their work schedules as well. So I think that's about everything.
Lori, you brought up the elephant in the room, which I was waiting for. Teachers not returning. I've heard in my circle a number who will not, are afraid to go back. A lot of teachers are afraid to go back. And this could be a big issue for administrators if things stay the way they are right now. Particularly older teachers are fearful. And that's a whole separate issue, but that's going to have, you touched upon it. Okay, Bernadette, thank you.
Okay, breakout room 6 is your room, Steve, and it's also with Emily Puccio and Rich Hoffman and Jonathan Singer. I'm not sure who was reporting.
Rich is our spokesperson.
Okay. We only have a few more minutes left, so.
All right. So yeah, a lot of what was said was, we covered in our discussions as well. Things I will say that we talked about that kind of were all encompassing regardless of which model. Was one, just in terms of sanitary, we talked about how the potential for STEM programs, hands-on STEM programs, to almost be eliminated because of the concerns about, touching microscopes and hands-on activities and the ability to keep all that stuff, clean and sanitary. That was something that definitely was part of our conversation. And also add in something, for me that I wasn't thinking about, but should definitely and will be now, is how our model that we go is going to line up with other models. In terms, we talked about BOCES and CTE programs, and whatever model they adopt, has to be in line with their partnering districts, so that we're able to actually send kids there to take advantage of those programs. But if they don't line up with the model that we adopt, we run the risk of students not getting the courses and requirements that they need to graduate. So that was a big concern and a big part of our conversation as well.
Manny, Rich, mention Manny's idea very quickly about that different schedule. That was a good.
Why don't you let Manny do that? Because he's gonna do a much better job than I will.
Manny, take a minute. I know we're running short on time, but you had an interesting idea there in our group. Manny?
So being from the middle school, we would go with the middle school schedule, but on Friday, we want to have a elective wheel. So that whole day would be all electives if we could, and split it up for kids. So if we had to use the whole month to cover the kids by having less in each class, that was something we're starting to talk about.
And again, I'm going to build on that very quickly. Some of you said on the alternate day model, the one that we mentioned, number 2, the fact that it doesn't have to be alternate day. It could be 2 days on, 2 days off, a week on, a week off. So we came up with different alternative models on number 2, different ways to do it. It doesn't have to be 1 day in, 1 day out because of the continuity. Okay, Bernadette.
Okay, room number 7, John Christie. Anything new or different that you want to add?
Similar to Manny, it would be at the elementary level, is particularly if you have shared special area staff that you dedicate a phys ed teacher to a particular building for a day, and they do phys ed that day and art in another building, because there was some concern about how you do specials with shared staff, and you could put it again on a 4-day cycle, a 6-day cycle, and then lastly, this notion of there'll need to be mandate relief for, whether it be a phys ed requirement, an art requirement. That's just the reality that we'd have to look at.
Thank you. And now we have group 8. We have Matt Baruch, who's speaking for that group.
Yep. So all similar views on 1 through 5, but we did kind of start to discuss a 6th option, where high school or older middle school students would continue distance learning and only need to come into the building on an as-needed basis for maybe support services or extra help. And that would kind of free up some space in our high school for the spreading out of the middle school and younger, the elementary schools and the teachers as younger middle schools as well. So just some brainstorming we did. So it came back though to, we thought the state guidelines would be too general and it's going to end up being a local decision. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. Breakout group 9, we had Don Murphy in that group. I'm not sure who's speaking in that.
Yes, who was jumping in here?
We have George Gagliardi, Kelly Anderson, Lori O'Hara, Liz Scaduto, Michelle Kay,
I think
Chris.
it was Michelle, right, Michelle? I can jump in. I'll just add to the list. Big picture is there's an understanding that somehow we have to settle on a model where you can easily transition to virtual on a dime, and that hybrid is going to be the name of the game no matter what, because certain parents won't send their kids to school no matter, regardless. And if the state doesn't provide some consistent guidelines, we need to work together probably at the superintendent level, because if Hop Hop chooses Model 1 and Smithtown chooses Model 3 and Kings Park chooses Model 5, some of you talked about this, it would create all sorts of other issues. So consistency really is the name of the game, if possible, across the island.
It's a good, very good point. That came up with the BOCES discussion.
Thanks. And then we have room 10. We have, let's see, Carissa, Dennis, Gary, Carrie, Nicole, Shalita, and Tim. I'm not sure who is your spokesperson.
I am Carissa. So more of the same. I think everybody fleshed it out pretty much the same as we did in our group. And we too said consistency was really critical here for childcare issues. I guess just some additional thoughts, perhaps having Friday as an elective wheel, that might be something to consider. We talked about if we're doing an A-day, B-day model in any district, it might be advantageous to do it alphabetically. So like parents with students in different buildings across the district can plan. So, but again, if you're an educator that says on your A-day, it's A through L students, but your last name is M. So it's just really more of the same about ensuring that Long Island districts are in somewhat lockstep. And the accessibility issue for more marginalized students who might be left home alone if their parents can't assist with the distance learning, which is a constant issue that we have to contend with. So that was just overarching pitfalls that we wanted to identify.
Thank you so much. Room 11, we had Christine Crisione, Guy Vaccaro, Jessica Williams, Patrick, and I'm not sure who the M is. That's what the first name is. So if you have anything different that you want to add, or if you want to say concur, it's also up to you.
No, we didn't have a speaker, but I'll speak. We concur with everything on here. The only other thing I'd like to add is that the models all talk about the teachers working all day live with students, but there's that also piece of what are the students doing while they're home. The teachers have to somewhat do double work as far as creating videos or work that they're doing in addition to that for students that are at home. So how would that work in any of these models, basically, was a concern. I know you said state mandate for subjects, but state mandate relief for hours, minutes, daily, that we're required to have for for secondary, middle school, and elementary as well. And standardized exams for next year, relief from that. That's a concern, where we're going with that, so.
And I'll add one on that, which has come up. Teachers who were up for tenure this year, their evaluation. That's been brought up to me. If there were a certain number of observations they had to have, how is this going to be done? How are they going to be evaluated if this is their tenure year?
Okay, thank you. And now group number 12, we had Adrienne Cerrone, Amy Brennan, A. Peterson.
For that. We have a lot of the same things, and the only couple that we can add to this is having enough teachers was a concern with the budgetary implications, that having enough teachers and really being spread thin with that, and also shared spaces for teachers if it's in school. That was the only other two that I think we can add. Thank you.
More teachers and more budget expenditures on temperature taking masks, other things. It's going to be a very difficult budget year, and listen to what Albany's saying about where they are with funding and school aid.
And Adrian Cerrone and I had a separate conversation last week about the hybrid learning piece. And we have a session at the end of July that's closed out. Enrollment is full, but we just added another session the first week of August. So just FYI. Breakout room number.
Bernadette, just real quick. The question about what are kids doing at home, one of the suggestions that came out of our group was actually to dedicate maybe a departmental teacher or an elementary teacher to online learning, where they would be responsible for pushing out the online content on the days that the kids were not in school.
Nice.
I've heard that. I like that one. We had that discussion here that one teacher relieves the others from having to do double duty, just be in charge of coming up with hybrid activities. I'll bet somebody would volunteer on all 3 levels. That's a great idea. Great idea.
Thank you. Okay, so we have 3 more rooms to go. So if you want to just concur, that's okay too. And if you want to add anything different, Ann Palmer, Anthony Butera, breakout room 13. I'm not sure who, or Chris Smalley. I'm not sure. Oh, Glenn Cochran. I think it was you.
Yeah. Most of it's very, very similar. But just to add, what we just mentioned is that what about all these teachers that are working with kids every day, when there's going to be time available for them to do that? That's really a big deal. And we had a couple of union people with us too. So they're very sensitive to that. One thing that you haven't spoken about is some sort of an accountability system. Something involving maybe all the stakeholders to come up and make sure that the families and students and teachers understand how they can be accountable to actually do school, because we have a lot that have gone dark. Another thing was a uniform platforms within the district. So, LMS platforms, so that as you move from teacher to teacher, they're not doing all different things, and it creates some confusion. And our biggest focus was on Plan 2. That seemed to be the best, but again, differences in the size of and number of students could be a problem. So I think after hearing this, I think the idea of having 2 days off, 1 day in, things like that might do it. But how do we deal with the asynchronous time when kids are home? How do we make that effective learning time for them?
Thank you. Okay, now we have 2 more rooms. Breakout room 14 has Jacqueline O'Hagan, Angela Austin, Krista Stevenson. I'm not sure who's speaking for that. If you want to add anything that hasn't been stated yet, or if you want to concur. I'll give you like 5 more seconds of wait time, and then we'll go on to room 15.
I think it's really a concur. We did have a lot of conversations about the electives concern and how do you determine what gets cut and not cut. And then our other concern was, particularly in the high school level, when you have kids who are multiple grade levels, so they might be in 9th grade math, but 11th grade English, or, and how do you manage their movement, because they may have to move from class to class during the day.
Great, thank you. And room 15, we have Kimberly Hart, Olivia, Nancy, Michelle, John, Amy, Paul.
Yes, I'll be presenting. So for we had said a lot of the same as everybody else, but for Model 3, the small learning community, we also thought one of the pros would be that there'd be more personal contact with students and families. It kind of lended itself to that. And then for the Model 4, the middle school teams, we thought that the pro would be the varied experiences of electives at that particular grade, so that they would have more opportunities to explore. And then one other thing that we pointed out for the Model 5, the elementary schools, we thought that that one had the least amount of negative impact in terms of it's similar to what's already happening in an elementary school. Although the one thing that would be of concern are those non-gen ed student populations that in terms of meeting staffing requirements, regulations, and staggering that schedule for transportation.
Okay, great.
We had a lot of similar points that everyone else shared.
Thank you so much. So Steve, we have a whole bunch of information here. This is great. Thank you for keeping those notes too. Steve, do you want to address any of the questions that were raised?
I'll send out for Chinese food and keep you guys here for the rest of the day. I think the common denominator is that every group came up with, and that's, I hate to say misery loves company, that's a terrible expression, but we're all seeing the same possible pitfalls. And assuming every district's going to have to tailor one of those plans to meet its own needs. I presented those 5 with that in mind, that there's something for everybody, and that considering your, again, contracts, your bell schedules, your budget limitations, transportation, you're going to have to make these things work for yourself. The one thing that came through, Bernadette, I know I'm watching the clock. Am I going to get cut off at 10:30? Does it work?
No, I had it ended later, so you're okay.
All right, just give me a minute, just a minute more here. I would take any, questions, but I'm going to put up on the screen at the end my email address. If anybody has any specific concerns, I'll be glad to answer them. It's my final slide that I'm going to put up. But every district's going to have to come up with its own plan. And what rang true through so many of them was there needs to be some consistency across districts, across buildings in the same district for this to work. There are teacher concerns, there are student concerns, there are parent concerns, there are central office concerns, there are transportation concerns. There are a lot of concerns, but the bottom line is we have to make this work. And the reason we came together today is that everybody's in the same boat, so to speak. And we've got to go forward and come up with something that will work for the kids with just the hope that there won't be another outbreak. And that's my, a concern everybody has. That was hinted at, and everybody kind of edged around it. What happens if a teacher or a kid in the school gets sick? What's going to happen, both in terms of notification and that the kids in that classroom, in that particular room? So those are whole separate issues. Our goal today, bottom line, was educational. Which of these plans will serve students the best to give them the best possible education? Of all the ideas, and there were so many, I jotted down 60, you saw them on the screen. I was thinking about this one, talking to friends and neighbors and colleagues, the idea of having somebody oversee the off hours, the hybrid, the Zoom, call it what you will, when the kids are at home, to have some activities, some creative person who could be in charge of that in each school, grade, department, whatever. That's one of my favorite ideas, although as I say, there were so many that came up. I go back to what Manny said about that elective day that was kind of popular in our group, about having one day for the electives. Bottom line, each school has to go back and tailor these to meet its own needs. Bernadette, I'm going to go to that final slide if I could. May I? Is that okay? Where is my final slide? Yeah, here we are. Okay, I'll go to the. Yeah, okay, so again, I'm watching the time because I promised to stay within the 90-minute confines. We got to the questions, most of them, but if you still have any, it says Dr. Steve Cusin, but you just call me Steve, I don't like titles, and jot down my email address, sk3015@aol.com, put in the subject area, BOCES. So I don't think you're trying to sell me something like your spam. Okay, I've gotten some weird ones. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'll be glad to help you. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody today, Bernadette, and thank you.
Hey, Steve, I just wanted to thank you on behalf of everybody. This was a very valuable session, and I think everybody got a lot out of it. So thank you to you, and thank you, Bernadette, for putting this together.
Good, my pleasure. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Kate and Bernadette.
Our pleasure, and thank you so much for being here to help us out and think this through. And thank you everybody for joining. I did post, you're getting a lot of thank yous in the chat, Steve, and I did post the attendance link once more. If you don't receive it for any reason, or if you can't access it, it's no problem. I'll send it out in an email. Thank you, everyone.
Bernadette?
Yes.
You'll send out that list of brainstorming ideas in the Word document?
Great idea. Yes, Steve will forward it to me when he's done.
Yes, I will.
And I'll share it with all of the attendees.
Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Great day.
Thank you, Bernadette.
You are very welcome. We're very happy that you found it helpful.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
All right, Bernadette, you still there?
I'm still here. I'm just going to save the chat.
I was going to ask you, I wanted to save that list. So I should go to, let me go into, I want to copy that list. Okay,
Yeah, you would just do File, Save As, and you would save it on your computer.
where is that? Where do I get that list now? I'm back into the PowerPoint. I have to go back to that list.
The Word. You have to go. You had it in a Word document.
Yeah, I've had it in Word. You have? Do you have it there? I'm trying to get back into.
No, it's on your laptop.
All right. Okay, let's see. Yeah, there it is. Got it. Okay, let me copy it. Good. We'll save this. Give me a second. Just want to make sure we don't lose it. Good, good. File save as. See summary. 1 second, I'll have it saved.